Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Juice Box with Pastor Justin. If you're new here, this is a time where we grab juice boxes or coffee if you're an adult, and we dive into the Bible and just look at a story and answer a question and have some fun together. And so thank you for joining us. I hope that you're having a great week. And if you like more of these videos, like and subscribe and comment down below, and new videos every Saturday. And so we'd love to have you here with the Juice Box with Justin family. And so today we are going to be tackling an important question. And that question is, can we trust God's promises? Can we trust God's promises? And the easy answer to that is yes. But we're going to look at a story today of a promise that God made to a man, and then he had to test to see if he was going to trust God with that promise. Before we get started today, though, I'm still drinking Capri Suns, of course, but it is very cold here, and I feel like this needs to go out of season by now. I need to get some different juice boxes. But hey, we are drinking Capri Sun, kiwi strawberry. Again, it's good, not my favorite, but you know what's even better? Jesus. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And so we're going to be starting in Genesis chapter 22. And so we're looking at two people, Abraham and Sarah. And so Abraham and his wife Sarah were very rich. And so they had lots of, and let me tell you, rich in biblical times, right? It was not based off of potentially how much money you had, but how much you owned, how much land, how much animals, how many people you owned, kind of thing. And so Abraham and his wife Sarah, they had lots of camels and lots of possessions and many servants, but they were missing something very important, and they had no children. They tried and tried, and they just weren't having children. And so one day God made Abraham a promise. God said, "Hey, Abraham, you're going to have many descendants, and if you look up in the sky, you're going to have even more descendants than the stars in the sky, or even the sand on the seashore." And Abraham thought, impossible. I'm too old to have kids. My wife is too old to have kids. And honestly, if we look at it, Abraham and Sarah were older than most great-grandparents. They were old, and you just don't have kids when you're old. And Sarah honestly didn't believe this promise at all, and unable to wait, she decided to give her servant Hagar to Abraham so he could conceive a child with her, and so they did, and they had a boy, and they named him Ishmael, and he was born. And though Sarah made her own plans, God did not break his promise. Even though it was physically impossible for Abraham and Sarah to have any kids, God gave them a baby boy. For you see, Abraham was 100 years old, and his wife Sarah was 90 when they had their precious child. They named him Isaac, and as Isaac grew older, Abraham loved him even more. He taught him all about God, and Isaac was a daily reminder of God's faithfulness in promise, that God will fulfill whatever promise he gives you. But the story continues. Early in the morning, when Isaac was a little bit older, God had given Abraham a test. And so God told Abraham, hey, take your son Isaac and sacrifice him to me. Let me read that again. God told Abraham, take your son Isaac, sacrifice him to me. And Abraham was heartbroken, but he loved God, and he knew that he must obey, and he knew that God was good, and that God had promised a son, and that God would keep his promises and provide another sacrifice in the place of Isaac. And so early the next morning, Abraham, Isaac, and his two servants set out to sacrifice to God. They loaded up a donkey with wood and traveled for 3 days to get to the right place. And that place was called Moriah. It was a mountain. And they climbed this mountain, and Abraham built an altar. But Isaac didn't see any animals around for the sacrifice. He didn't understand what Abraham what was about to do. And so Abraham assured Isaac that God would provide the offering himself. He said, Isaac, I know God. God will fulfill the promises that he has given me. He will provide a sacrifice. With tears in his eyes, Abraham was pleading to God. Abraham tied up his son upon the altar. He was grieved beyond description. Heartbroken, Abraham lifted his knife to offer his son's life as a sacrifice. Suddenly, a voice spoke from heaven saying, Abraham, Abraham. And an angel of the Lord said, don't harm the boy. Because you were willing to sacrifice your son in obedience to God, I know that you fear him. And relieved, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw a ram caught in a thicket. God had provided a sacrifice just like Abraham told Isaac that God would do. And Abraham was overjoyed. His son Isaac would live. God had provided that sacrifice, and God kept his promise. And so Abraham took the ram. He sacrificed it to the Lord. And this is just a beautiful lesson that God showed Abraham. And in one day, right, God promises something for us. God's only son, Jesus, would be given in a similar way. God's son, Jesus, would be given as a sacrifice for all the sin of mankind. For we are all born sinful. It says in Romans 3:23 that for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We're all sinful. We all make mistakes. Even Pastor Justin makes mistakes. Even your parents make mistakes. But God provided a way. God provided a sacrifice. And that is through Jesus' death on the cross. And what's so amazing just about this whole story is that Abraham knew that God had promised a son and knew that God would provide a way to save Isaac. And this is an amazing faith that Abraham had. He trusted God's promises, and we can also trust in those promises too. And so whatever you may be going through, if you're going through something, whatever you may be feeling, or maybe you're having a tough time at school or making friends or in a new place, right? God will always, always, always help you through those situations because God has an amazing plan for your life. God knows what's going to happen in your life, and you can trust him to lead you and guide you in the right direction. And then when we put our faith and trust in him, we live a life that is full of praise and glory to the creator of the entire world. And that's our story for today. The question, can we trust God's promises? Yes, we can. Because Abraham trusted God's promises and God provided a way. And we can trust God's promises because God sent his only son to die on the cross for our sins, and he promised that to us. What an amazing God that we have. That whatever he promises will come true. And so today's memory verse for today is this. It comes from Proverbs 3:5-6. This will also be in the description below along with Genesis chapter 22. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. I'm going to read that again for you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. What an amazing promise that he makes. And so, hey, thank you so much for joining us for Juice Box with Pastor Justin. I hope you had a great time. I hope you had a good juice box. I hope, maybe it was a Capri Sun. And if it was, leave it in the comments. That would be awesome. Parents, I hope you enjoyed your coffee and were fulfilled with this moment. So, hey, we'll be back next week for another episode, diving more into Genesis and talking more about the promise that God had to send his only son to die on the cross for our sins. And so I hope you have a great week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. And we will see you next Saturday.